The Galactic Council chamber was a place of great decisions. It was a massive hall, floating in the heart of the Zyra Nebula, where the most powerful alien leaders gathered. Their glowing robes and shimmering scales reflected the light from the cosmic storms outside. These were the rulers of the galaxy, the ones who decided the fate of entire civilizations. Tonight, they had gathered for one reason: to discuss the humans. Supreme General Exorthak of the Dralvek Empire leaned back in his gravity throne, his sharp mandibles clicking in amusement. Humans? Are we really wasting time on them? He scoffed. They are weak, primitive, and foolish. Their armies are nothing but insects compared to ours. A ripple of laughter spread across the chamber. The Thalrax ambassador, a reptilian being with gleaming red eyes, hissed in agreement. I have studied their history. They fight among themselves. They are emotional, irrational, and undisciplined. Their military strategies are outdated. If we attacked, they would fall within days. The Zykor Chancellor, a floating mass of shifting energy, pulsed with amusement. I heard they still use metal ships instead of energy-based constructs. How pathetic. More laughter. The council was in complete agreement. Humanity was weak, unworthy of respect, and certainly no threat to the mighty galactic empires. But one figure did not laugh. Admiral Valor of the Vexari Dominion sat quietly, his large black eyes fixed on the holographic display in front of him. Unlike the others, he had studied human warfare carefully. He had seen their past, their battles, their strange ability to survive against impossible odds, and he was not convinced they were weak. Perhaps, Valor said carefully, we should not underestimate them. The room fell silent. Then came the mocking voices. Admiral Valor, do you fear these tiny creatures? Kekchor sneered. Do you think their toy weapons can stand against our warships? Valor shook his head. It is not their weapons I fear, he said. It is their will to fight. Humans do not surrender easily. History has shown that when pushed into a corner, they become unpredictable. The council members exchanged amused glances. Unpredictable. That was just another word for reckless and desperate. Then let us see how unpredictable they really are, the Thalrax ambassador said with a sharp grin. I propose a test. A glowing hologram of Earth appeared in the center of the chamber. The blue and green planet spun slowly, unaware of the great danger about to come. We send a fleet to their system, the ambassador continued. A small force, nothing too serious. We land, demand surrender, and see how they react. If they fight, we crush them. If they surrender, they will serve us. The council roared in approval. It was a perfect plan. A test, a demonstration of power. Thorthak grinned, his sharp fangs glinting. Then it is decided. The fleet will leave immediately. Soon, the humans will bow before us. Vodlor watched in silence as the council cheered for war. Something deep inside him whispered that they had just made a terrible mistake. But it was too late. The invasion had begun. The Dralvek fleet arrived in Earth's orbit with the confidence of conquerors. Their massive warships, each the size of a small moon, hovered above the blue planet like silent predators. They had expected fear. They had expected immediate surrender. Instead, they were greeted by silence. Commander Zurich, a tall, armored Dralvek officer, stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominator, gazing at the planet below. His glowing red eyes narrowed. Something felt wrong. Any resistance detected? He asked. His second-in-command, General Carvos, let out a deep laugh. Resistance? From these primitive creatures? Our scans show no planetary shields, no orbital defenses. Their weapons are centuries behind us. This will be over before it begins. The bridge officers chuckled. The invasion force, consisting of 50 warships and over 100,000 ground troops, was more than enough to crush this world. Open a planetary broadcast, Zyrek ordered. Let's give them a chance to surrender before we burn their cities. A few moments later, a holographic transmission was sent to every major human network. Zyrek's towering figure, clad in dark battle armor, appeared on every screen across Earth. Attention, people of Earth. We are the Dralvek Dominion. Your planet now belongs to us. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed. You have 10 minutes to comply. The message was clear. The countdown began, but Earth did not respond. 10 minutes passed, then 15, then 20. Silence. Zyrek frowned. Strange. I expected panic. Screaming leaders, desperate negotiations. Why are they not responding? Carvos smirked. Perhaps they are too afraid to answer. Then, something unexpected happened. The alien fleet's communication systems flickered. The screens glitched. Static filled the air. And then, a voice, calm, deep, and undeniably human, echoed through the entire Drolvek fleet. If you wanted a response, you should have knocked first. For the first time, Zyrek felt uneasy. Who is this? He demanded. The voice didn't answer. Instead, the Drolvek ship's systems started failing. At first, it was minor. Radars flickered, long-range scanners shut down for a few seconds. But then, the lights dimmed. Shields fluctuated. Targeting systems failed. Report, Zyrek barked. An officer's voice trembled. Sir, we've lost contact with half the fleet. Zyrek turned sharply. Lost contact. What do you mean? Before the officer could answer, the entire fleet's radar screens turned black. And then, one by one, the Drolvek ships started disappearing. Not exploding, not retreating, just gone. Zyrek's blood ran cold. Impossible. What technology is this? Carvos was no longer smiling. His hands trembled. Sir, we need to pull back. But it was too late. Outside the Dominator's massive windows, something moved. At first, it looked like empty space. Then, slowly, the shape of a massive, nearly invisible human warship emerged from the shadows. It was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Sleek, dark, and silent. No energy readings, no visible weapons, just a haunting, predator-like presence. Zyrek whispered, "What is that?" Then the voice returned, colder this time. "You thought we had no defenses. You thought we were weak. You never asked what happened to the last fleet that tried this." Zyrek felt true fear for the first time in his life. The Drolvek had laughed at the idea of human military strength. They weren't laughing anymore. Zyrek's claws dug into the armrests of his command chair as the massive human warship loomed before them. His mind raced, struggling to make sense of what he was seeing. Humans weren't supposed to have ships like this. They weren't supposed to have technology that could cloak entire fleets, disable alien systems, and make warships vanish into thin air. Yet here they were. The Drolvek fleet, once so confident, now floated in chaos and fear. "Sir," a communications officer shouted, his voice shaking. "We've lost 17 ships from our scanners. They're just gone." Zyrek's breath hitched. That was impossible. Even with advanced weapons, no fleet could eliminate 17 warships in seconds without a single explosion. There had been no battles, no visible enemy attacks. Only silence and disappearance. General Carvos slammed his fist on the control panel. "Find out what happened to them. Did they warp away? Were they destroyed?" "Unknown, sir," the officer replied. "1 second they were there. The next, nothing." Then the human voice returned. "You invaded our space. You threatened our people. Now, it's our turn." Zyrek's body tensed. "Open fire," he roared. "All weapons, target that ship. Destroy it." The Drolvek warships immediately responded, unleashing a storm of plasma cannons, ion disruptors, and antimatter warheads. The entire void between them and the human ship erupted into light. And then, nothing. The blasts vanished before reaching their target. No impact, No explosion. It was as if the human ship was an illusion. Then, a second human warship emerged from the darkness. Then a third. Then a fourth. One by one, massive human warships decloaked all around the Dralvek fleet, silent, motionless, waiting. Zirek's hands clenched into fists. His fleet, which had once seemed unstoppable, was now surrounded. Carvo's voice was hoarse. "Sir, there are dozens of them." Zirek's mind reeled. Where had these ships come from? The Dralvek had scanned the system before entering. They had found no major fleet presence, no orbital defense platforms. How had the humans hidden an entire fleet right under their noses? A flicker of movement caught Zirek's eye. One of the human ships shifted slightly, its hull shimmering like liquid metal. And then, without warning, it attacked. A single thin beam of light shot from the human vessel, barely visible, almost unremarkable. And yet, the moment it struck the nearest Dralvek warship, the entire ship collapsed in on itself. Not an explosion. It was erased. Gone in an instant. No wreckage. No debris. As if it had never existed. The Dralvek fleet went deathly silent. Zirek's throat felt dry. His forces had seen planetary bombardments, had fought in wars that lasted decades. Never had he seen a weapon like this. The realization struck him like a dagger to the chest. The humans weren't just hiding their power. They had evolved past traditional warfare entirely. Another beam fired. Another ship disappeared. Then another. Panic set in. Officers shouted over one another. Fear spread like wildfire through the ranks. "They're picking us off one by one." A lieutenant screamed. "Sir, we need to retreat." Zirek's pride warred with his survival instincts. Retreat. From humans, they had come here expecting an easy conquest. Now, they were the ones being hunted. Another ship vanished before his eyes. Carvos grabbed Zirek's arm. "We have to leave. Now." Zirek hesitated. If they retreated, it would be a humiliation unlike any other. The mighty Dralvek Dominion, sent running by an inferior species. But if they stayed, there might not be a fleet left to retreat at all. Teeth grinding, he made the call. "All ships, fall back." Now. Engines roared to life. The remaining Dralvek ships turned, racing toward the jump point. But the humans weren't finished. As the first ships prepared to warp, something massive appeared in front of them. A structure. A space station, if it could even be called that. It was bigger than any artificial construct Zirek had ever seen, dwarfing even the largest of Dralvek ships. And it was blocking their escape. The human voice returned, calm and cold. "We gave you a chance to leave. You chose war." The massive station began to glow. Energy pulsed along its surface. Carvos whispered, horror-stricken. "They built a superweapon." The station fired. A wave of pure, shimmering energy rippled through space. Zirek only had seconds to realize the truth. They had underestimated the wrong species. The bridge of Zirek's command ship was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the panicked beeping of failing systems and the ragged breathing of his officers. The mighty Dralvek fleet, unstoppable conquerors of 100 worlds, were now the ones being hunted. The human superweapon had fired, and in its wake, an unnatural wave of energy rippled through space. Entire Dralvek warships were caught in the wave, their hulls glowing for a brief second before vanishing, erased from existence. Zirek watched in disbelief. He had faced planetary defenses, ion storms, and black holes in his career, but this was something else entirely. A weapon beyond comprehension. One moment, he had commanded an armada of destruction. The next, he was surrounded by ghosts of ships that no longer existed. His hands trembled as he turned to his second-in-command. "Carvos." "Damage report," he said, his voice hoarse. Carvos was staring at the holoscreen, his mandibles twitching. He didn't respond. "Carvos." Zirek snapped. The general blinked and finally turned to him. His voice was barely above a whisper. "We lost over half the fleet, sir." Zurek felt the weight of those words settle over him like a crushing force. Half the fleet, wiped out in a single shot. He clenched his jaw. And the humans? Carvos swallowed, not a single casualty. Zyrek's claws tightened against the control panel, cracking the surface. How was this possible? They had spent centuries dominating weaker species, perfecting the art of war. And now, they were the ones running. The human fleet had stopped firing. They weren't chasing the retreating Dralvek ships. They were waiting. Zurek knew what that meant. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was a message. The humans weren't exterminating them. They weren't even pursuing them. They were letting them live, just to prove that they could have killed them all. A fresh wave of rage burned through Zyrek's veins. How dare they? "Sir," a technician shouted. "They're hailing us." Zyrek's mandibles twitched. On screen, the image of a human appeared. Unlike the fearsome warlords or brutal conquerors Zyrek had expected, this one was calm, cold, calculated. The human wore a dark uniform with silver insignias, their short, cropped hair and piercing eyes, giving them the look of a predator that didn't need to roar to show its dominance. When the human finally spoke, their voice was deathly quiet. "You came here thinking you could conquer us. You thought we were weak. You were wrong." Zyrek's claws dug into his palm. He would not bow. He would not show weakness. "You will regret this," he growled. The human tilted their head slightly. Almost amused. "Regret." The human exhaled slowly. "We do not regret. We prepare. You invaded our space, threatened our people, and yet we let you live." The human leaned forward, their expression unreadable. "The only question is, will you make that mistake again?" Zurek felt the weight of those words settle on him like an iron shackle. This wasn't just a warning. It was a promise. A cold realization gripped him. The Dralvek Dominion had never been the apex predator. They had only believed they were. And now, they had met the real ones. Zurek had never known fear. Not real fear. He had stood on the ruins of conquered worlds, watching flames consume the last remnants of civilizations that dared defy the Dralvek Dominion. He had walked through the halls of subjugated species, hearing their whispered pleas for mercy as his warriors dragged them into servitude. But this was something else. As the human commander's image faded from the view screen, silence filled the bridge. The survivors of his once mighty fleet drifted in space, broken and humiliated. Zurek gritted his mandibles. His claws curled into a fist as he turned to Carvos. "Order the remaining ships to regroup," he growled. "We are not leaving this system without retribution." Carvos hesitated. Zurek saw it, the flicker of doubt in his lieutenant's eyes. "They let us go, Commander," Carvos said carefully. "They could have finished us off, but they chose not to." "Which is why we strike now," Zyrek snapped. "They think they can intimidate us, make us question our strength. But the Dralvek do not cower. We do not run." Carvos glanced at the wreckage surrounding them. "Then why are we the ones who are bleeding?" Zyrek's mandibles twitched. His second-in-command was too cautious, too shaken by what had just happened. Zurek turned to the tactical officer. "Status of our heavy cruisers. 2 remain operational, but heavily damaged," the officer reported. "The rest are gone." Zyrek's throat tightened. More than half of his warships had been erased in an instant. 1 human weapon, 1 shot. Yet he refused to believe this was the end. "Send a distress signal to the High Council," he ordered. "Tell them the humans are more dangerous than we thought, but victory is still within reach. We need reinforcements." A sharp alarm cut him off. "Commander," the sensor officer gasped, "something is happening to the human ships." Zurek turned to the view screen. At first, it looked as if nothing had changed. The human fleet remained where it was, silent and unmoving. Then the ships began to shift. Not like traditional vessels adjusting position, but as if their very forms were evolving. Metal twisted and expanded. Energy surged along their hulls, reshaping them. It was as though the fleet itself was adapting. Zarek's claws tightened. "What are they doing?" I don't know," the officer stammered. "It's like they're upgrading themselves in real time." Zarek's blood ran cold. No species, no empire, had ever developed warships that could change and evolve mid-battle. It was impossible, unthinkable. Yet here it was. The human fleet, which had already devastated the Dralvek Armada, was now becoming stronger. A realization struck Zarek like a thunderbolt. The humans weren't just prepared for war. They were learning. Every second that passed, they were gathering data, analyzing the Dralvek's weaknesses, optimizing their defenses, perfecting their attacks. The next time they fired, it wouldn't be with the same weapon. It would be something even more powerful. Zarek's breath caught in his throat. For the first time in his life, he felt the weight of true inevitability. There was no escape from this. No counterattack that could turn the tide. The Dralvek Dominion had always seen themselves as the strongest force in the galaxy. But now they had met the one species that had no limit to its strength. Because humans did not stop. Humans did not peak. They only got stronger. Zarek swallowed hard. There was only one choice left. "Carvos," he said slowly, forcing the words through clenched teeth. "Prepare the fleet for retreat." Carvos hesitated. "But you just said." "I was wrong," Zarek admitted. "We cannot fight them like this. Not now." He turned to the view screen one last time, watching as the human ships continued their terrifying transformation. The Dralvek Dominion had ruled the stars for centuries. But today they had learned what it meant to stand against the tide of human evolution. And for the first time in history, the Dralvek ran. The Dralvek Dominion had never known true defeat. For generations, they had swept across the stars like an unstoppable force, bending entire civilizations to their will. But now, their warships limped through the void, retreating into the dark corners of space like wounded beasts. Zarek sat in his command chair, his claws gripping the armrests so tightly that the metal groaned under the pressure. The bridge of his flagship was deathly silent. Only the occasional flickering of damaged consoles and the distant hum of emergency power systems broke the oppressive stillness. His warriors were afraid. They did not speak it, but he could smell it in the air. The acrid stench of uncertainty, the bitter scent of shaken faith. And worse than that, he felt it too. The humans should have finished them off. It was Dralvek doctrine. No mercy, no survivors. That was how war was fought. That was how power was maintained. But the humans, they had let them leave. Not because they were weak, not because they feared retaliation. No, Zarek understood now. They had let them go because they didn't see the Dralvek as a threat anymore. They had learned, adapted, improved. And they knew that next time, the battle wouldn't even be close. A deep rumbling growl escaped his throat. He could not accept that. A blinking alert pulled him from his thoughts. One of the few intact communication terminals lit up, displaying an incoming transmission from the High Council. Zarek took a slow breath, steeling himself before activating the channel. A towering holographic figure appeared before him. A Dralvek elder draped in regal battlecloth, his 4 eyes burning with expectation. "Zarek." The elder's voice was like grinding stone. "Report." For a long moment, he said nothing. He could feel the eyes of his crew on him, waiting, listening. What could he say? That they had been outmatched. That their proud fleet had been reduced to wreckage. That they had witnessed something beyond their comprehension, a force that defied everything they believed about war. "Commander," the elder pressed, his tone sharp. "Speak." Zarek clenched his jaw. Finally, he exhaled and said, "The humans are unlike any enemy we have faced. The elder narrowed his eyes. You were warned not to underestimate them. Zurich bared his teeth. We didn't. We couldn't. And yet, even with all our strength, all our preparation, we were nothing to them. They learn. They change. Every moment of battle, they improved. Their technology, their strategy, it evolves in real time. The elder's expression remained unreadable, but Zurich could sense his growing concern. You mean to tell me, the elder said slowly, that a primitive species is superior to the Dominion? Zurich's mandibles twitched. Superior is the wrong word. They are becoming superior. They are not bound by limits. Their minds, their weapons, their tactics, they do not remain the same. Every battle makes them stronger. Every loss teaches them how to win the next time. If we fight them again, they will not simply defeat us. They will have already figured out how to erase us. A heavy silence settled over the bridge. For a long time, the elder said nothing. Then, in a quiet, measured voice, he asked, "Do you believe they are unstoppable?" Zurich did not answer immediately. He wanted to say no. He wanted to believe that the Dominion still held power over the lesser species, that the balance of the galaxy remained unchanged. But that would be a lie. I believe, he said finally, that if we treat them as just another enemy, we will cease to exist. The elder studied him, his 4 eyes cold and calculating. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he gestured to someone off-screen. A second figure appeared in the transmission, a smaller Drolvek, hunched and robed, their face hidden beneath the folds of ceremonial cloth. Zurich recognized them instantly. The shadow strategist, the Dominion's most secretive tactician, the one whose existence was known to only a handful of the highest-ranking warriors. You will report directly to the shadow strategist, the elder declared. They will assess this situation. Zurich stiffened. You think one strategist can? You misunderstand, the elder interrupted. This is not a mere war, Commander. This is a test of our survival. If humans are what you claim, then the Dominion must change as well. Zurich's breath caught. Change. The Dominion had stood for millennia by refusing to change, by demanding strength through tradition. But now, the High Council was suggesting something unthinkable. Zurich glanced at the shadow strategist, whose concealed gaze was locked onto him. For the first time, he wondered, could the Drolvek become like the humans? Could they adapt? Or had they already lost? The great war halls of the Drolvek Dominion had never been this silent. Counselors, warlords, and high strategists sat in their respective seats, their expressions carved from stone. The chamber, built to inspire fear and power, now felt small, as if the walls were closing in on them. At the center of the grand table stood the shadow strategist. Their identity remained unknown to most, their face shrouded by a hood laced with ancient runes. They spoke rarely, but when they did, their words shaped the future of the Dominion. And now they had called this emergency gathering for a single reason. The humans, the shadow strategist began, their voice calm but razor-sharp, have forced the Dominion into a state it has never known before. A ripple of unease passed through the council. We have suffered losses, one of the warlords snapped. But we have always recovered. We have crushed enemies far older than the humans. The shadow strategist slowly turned toward him. You speak as if you still believe this is a war we can win through brute strength. A tense silence followed. The warlord looked around the room for support, but few met his gaze. Zurich, still recovering from his last battle, sat near the edge of the chamber. He had not spoken since the meeting began, but now, all eyes slowly turned to him. He had fought the humans. He had seen what they were capable of. You do not understand, Zurich said at last, his voice low but firm. This is not a war of ships and soldiers anymore. This is a war of evolution, and we are losing. The warlord scoffed. Ridiculous. No species can evolve so quickly. They already have, Zurich interrupted. Every battle makes them stronger. Every loss teaches them something new. Every weapon they see, they find a way to counter. We face an enemy that does not stagnate. We are playing by old rules while they rewrite the game itself. A murmur spread through the council. Some were unconvinced. Others, however, looked uneasy. The shadow strategist let the discussion continue for a moment before speaking again. Our fleets have been reduced to remnants. Our weapons, once unmatched, are now countered before they can be used. Our enemy no longer fears us. And now we must ask ourselves a question. They let the silence hang for a moment. Can the Dominion change? The counselors stiffened. The very idea was heretical. The Dominion had stood unchallenged for thousands of years, built on tradition, conquest, and unyielding strength. To change was to admit weakness. To change was to adapt. To change was to become like the humans. A warlord slammed his fist on the table. This is madness. You are suggesting that we abandon everything we are. I am suggesting that we do what is necessary to survive. The shadow strategist replied smoothly. Because if we do not, there will be nothing left of the Dominion but whispers in the void. A hush fell over the room. Zurich exhaled slowly. This was the moment. We must watch them, he said. Not as enemies, but as students. We must learn as they do. We must understand how they evolve. And then we must evolve alongside them. A younger counselor, barely past his first century, hesitated before asking. And if we do not? Zurich turned to him, his gaze cold. Then the Dominion will die, he said simply, and humanity will not even remember our name. No one spoke for a long time. Then, at last, the shadow strategist nodded. Then it is decided, they said. The Dominion will no longer seek to conquer the humans. They raised a single, clawed hand. We will infiltrate them. We will become them. We will reshape ourselves in the way they have reshaped war. A ripple of unease spread across the room, but no one argued. Because deep down, they all knew. This was the only way forward.